Welcome to another installment of Revelation Tells Us. The war has already been decided. Today we're going to take a look at Revelation chapter 20, and that's the one where, of course, the devil finally meets his end. Well, what I did is I took a look at some of these key words in here. And if we flip on over to the King James, you can look at chain, a fetter, and you can look at bottomless pit, and it goes on through a whole bunch of words, but basically nothing really mysterious there. Loose for a season, space and time. So basically, I already did most of the work for you by looking up most of these key words on here. We're going to just flip right on over to the full screen Bible so you can actually see it. And basically when we look at the repeated words, we see saws repeated a couple of times. So it has a lot to do with vision. Okay, and then we've got the pit, we've got bound, we got chains, we got locked. So, let's just read it and take it for the literary context that it was written in. Then, of course, right here we see, alright, then tells us we gotta look at the previous chapter before we can understand this chapter. What happened at the end of the previous chapter? Come and eat the flesh of kings and generals and strong warriors, of horses and their riders, and all humanity, both free and slave, small and great. Then I saw the beast and the kings of the world and their armies gathered together to fight against the one sitting on the horse and his army. In other words, this army was basically gathered to fight against Jesus and his return. And the beast was captured, and with him the false prophet who did mighty miracles on behalf of the beast, miracles that deceived all who had accepted the mark of the beast and who worshipped his statue. Both the beast and his false prophet were thrown alive into the fiery lake of burning sulfur. So at this particular time we got to pay attention, because the beast and the false prophet were thrown into the lake of fire. Their entire army was killed by the sharp sword that came from the mouth of the one riding on a white horse, and the vultures all gorged themselves on the dead bodies. So basically, what is this? This is the end of Satan's army. He's been defeated. And, so he gathers his whole army together, and guess what happens? There's not even a battle. Jesus just destroys them with one word. So after Satan's army is destroyed, then I saw an angel coming down from heaven with the key to the bottomless pit and a heavy chain in his hand. Do you see how this linking word then puts these two chapters together? This is all written as one long story when John wrote it, and then later on, when they came up with the King James Bible, they divided it into chapters and verses. He sees the dragon, that old serpent, who is the devil, Satan, and bound him in chains for 1,000 years. You see how dragon, serpent, devil, Satan, they're all linked together. So all this symbolism is all explained right here in verse 2. And he bound him in chains for 1,000 years. The angel threw him into the bottomless pit, which he had then shut and locked, so Satan could not deceive the nations anymore until the 1,000 years were finished. Afterwards, he must be released for a little while. When we see something like this, to where all of these dragon, serpent, those symbols are explained by the devil. And the symbolism, it's pointing us to the fact in verse 2 that the symbolism is pretty easy to figure out. 1,000 years is 1,000 years. The bottomless pit is locked away. Shouldn't be hard to figure out. Then I saw thrones, and the people sitting on them have been given the authority to judge. So basically, these people sitting on the thrones, and we can look it up, Jesus' apostle were all promised thrones, and they were given the authority to judge. In other words, to look over all those records and go over the whole judgment period that we saw in, Revelation chapter 14. See, I'm not really that great in remembering chapter and verse and all that stuff, but what I do is I just remember the stories and the sequence of it, and it makes it a lot easier on the brain if you just go by remembering the stories and Revelation and the rest of the Bible. And I saw the souls of those that had been beheaded for their testimony about Jesus and for proclaiming the Word of God. They had not worshipped the beast or his statue or accepted his mark on their forehead or their hands. They all came to life again, and they reigned with Christ for 1,000 years. So here we've got this 1,000 years. There's two things that happen in 1,000 years. Satan is bound. He's locked up. He's locked away. And all of the people that followed Jesus and gave his testimony all came to life again. So basically, that's the resurrection you want to be involved with. This is the first resurrection. The rest of the dead did not come back to life until 1,000 years had ended. So all of this stuff is being explained. And you see how Revelation used all that symbolism, and now here in chapter 20 it's explaining that symbolism. We don't have to go out to any other book. We don't have to go out to preachers. We certainly don't want to go to the false prophets for any interpretation on Revelation. The book itself explains all of the symbolism it used. Blessed and holy are those who share in the first resurrection. For them the second death holds no power, but they will be priests of God and of Christ, and will reign with him 1,000 years. Now, when they call it priest of God and Christ, both Peter and Paul wrote about this. And then if you look back, Moses wrote about it, to where originally that's what God took the Israelites out of Egypt for, so that they could be his priests. But they accepted it at first, and then they decided to turn it down because they didn't really think they could keep the 10 Commandments, and they basically said, well, Moses, you go up, talk to God, and then you tell us what he said. And then what they were thinking was, because if you tell us, then we can pick and choose what we want to follow and what we don't want to follow. When the 1,000 years came to an end, Satan will be let out of his prison. He will go to deceive the nations called Gog and Magog. You notice here that after that first battle, which was all gathered around Armageddon, the second one, they use the term Gog and Magog, and that's one of the deceptions the false prophet uses, is he combines Armageddon with Gog and Magog. In every corner of the earth, he will gather them together for battle, a mighty army as numerous as sand along the seashore. And I saw as they went up on the broad plain of earth and surrounded God's people and a beloved city. You see, this is not Armageddon. This is surrounding the new city, Jerusalem, which is explained in the next chapter. But fire from heaven came down on the attacking armies and consumed them. So basically, in chapter 19, we saw a battle. They were all destroyed with the word of Christ. And in this one, they're destroyed by fire that consumed them. Then the devil who had deceived them was thrown into the fiery lake of burning sulfur, joining the beast and the false prophet. You see, it's even emphasizing the link between chapter 19 by repeating this, joining the beast and the false prophets. There they will be tormented day and night forever and ever. And I saw a great white throne and the one sitting on it. The earth and the sky fled from his presence, but they found no place to hide. I saw the dead, both great and small, standing before God's throne, and the books were opened, including the book of life. And the dead were judged according to what they had done, as recorded in the books. The sea gave up its dead, and death and the grave gave up their dead, and all were judged according to their deeds. Then death and the grave were thrown into the lake of fire. This lake of fire is the second death, and anyone whose name was not found recorded in the book of life was thrown into the lake of fire. Now I just wanted to add a little bit here, and you can look in Genesis and confirm it. When Genesis 1 goes through the creation, what does Genesis 2 do? It goes back and adds some more detail to it. And we're getting that right here. In these last few verses, a summation of chapter 20. And this is why it was recorded in the King James as the summation for this chapter. Because it's adding details that go back and explain what happened in previous verses in the same chapter. So keep that in mind when you read it, because there's a lot of speculation. Most people believe that when Satan gathers his army for this war, that all the dead were raised. And he gathered together every warrior, every sinner, everyone that was lost. And they thought, there's so many of us, we can beat up on this city, New Jerusalem, no problem at all. And then you got to look at the size of New Jerusalem, which basically, if you look at it, we'll look at it in the next chapter. It's basically from the east coast of the United States all the way to the Mississippi. So it's big. So there's a lot of people. Anyway, that's what I got for today. So hope you enjoyed it. And if you liked it, hit the like, leave a comment, share, subscribe. But remember, Revelation tells us the war has already been decided. And that's kind of the message we got to get out today. Because we've got all these left and woke people that don't even believe in God, so they're probably not going to believe you when you try to explain this, but at least you know where to find it now. So keep on praying. Have a great day.